Broadcasting live. It's America's longest running talk show on computers. It's Computer America, bringing you the biggest names in technology with guest interviews, new products, and your emails. Listen live at computeramerica.com on any device around the world. Email the show at live@computeramerica.com or find us on social media. Be sure to check out our website for contests, giveaways, show notes, live video stream, podcasts, and more. You're listening to Computer America.
Hello and welcome into the Computer America Show. We are the nation's longest running and nationally syndicated radio talk show on computers and technology. Thank you for joining us. I'm your host, Ben Crossman, and everyone out there, hey, how you doing? Welcome into the program. So let me change one thing here real quick, and yeah, we should be good to go right there. Always forget to do every little thing here for the show. But hey, I at least remember to be here, and that is the first part of it. So everyone, welcome into the program. So today on the show, we have a full hour dedicated to computer and technology news. If you were hoping for Sandy Berger, who would normally be on the show, of course, you can find all of her work over at CompuKiss and her other publications. But yeah, we decided to reschedule just a bit, and she will be back either next week or in the following month. So don't want to disappoint anyone, but that's what happened there. So, as I said before, computer and technology news brought to you by Computer America. Tons of stories, and a lot of them, sorry if you are a little bit overloaded with the coronavirus. I know that I am as well, but we have some pretty big announcements over what's happening. So, let's go ahead and just say first things first, computeramerica.com. That's where you'll find everything, including today's show notes, past shows, future shows, articles, reviews, social media, topics, just podcasts, everything like that. Of course, computeramerica.com. Check that out. While you're there, also be sure to find us on social media. And hey, anything that we talk about on the show today, you can find in today's show notes, which will be links to articles, links to products, links to everything. So that if you feel like you want to do more research, or if you want to double check and write me an email, hey, feel free to do that. Or I think the best way to probably reach out is either going to be through Facebook or Twitter. Email, who uses that anymore other than everyone? I recall long ago, like just about as long as I've been doing this, and I'm sure as long as some people have been, listening to the program here or even using it. I'm sure that the year after email was, of course, put out, I'm sure that the year after people were already decrying the death of email. But hey, it stayed, it's still a thing, and hey, live at computeramerica.com if you feel like you want to get in touch with the show or social media. So with that being said, everyone, let's just have a good, honest, and relaxing show as we talk about the end of the world as we know it here on Computer America with computer and technology news. So I think for our first story that we're going to do, and we have a ton of them that we could potentially do, and how about, well, probably one of the biggest events to happen in the, kind of in the past 24 hours. And this has everything to do with the coronavirus. And actually, this is about E3. Certain correspondents, I'm not going to name names, but Pop Czar and Nathan Evans, but they have been decrying that E3 has changed over the past couple of years, and E3 as an event was kind of having a downward spiral, whereas CES, we were out there. It's a huge event, hundreds of thousands of people, and it's a very healthy event. E3, all it took was, of course, something like the coronavirus. And don't get me wrong, I'm sure that this has been, this would be out of everyone's best interest to do this, but it's also a question of, can E3 actually survive doing this? So E3 canceled this year. Obviously, I believe the event itself was scheduled for sometime in June. We are months and months and months away from it, but in the here and now, it's looking like a really bad idea to bring 70,000 people into one arena and have them all sharing keyboards, mice, headsets, and just generally the same air. So this is coming to us from The Independent, and Mr. Andrew Griffin saying that the world's biggest game conference is about to be canceled according to reports, saying that the decision to cancel the event has already been announced according to reports from Bloomberg and Ars Technica. It is expected to be announced officially later today, and I'm sure that as of the writing of this article, that it actually has. E3, they officially called the Electronics Entertainment Expo, which is the actual name of the event, brings 70,000 people to Los Angeles every single year to show new and upcoming games. It's really the biggest trade show focused entirely on video games. So, of course, there's been some problems with E3 over the past couple of years, really since 2016. 2016, I think that a couple of key players in E3 stopped showing up. I think that it was Sony, who of course makes the PlayStation one of the biggest, one of the biggest personal in-home consoles in the world. They stopped showing up at E3 on a regular basis. Nintendo has a booth, but they neglected to have a full-blown keynote kind of deal at E3, instead opting in for the Nintendo Direct event where they talk about their upcoming games. It's an event entirely dedicated to Nintendo themselves. And then even Microsoft, with their latest Xbox, they've been a fixture. They've been one of the cornerstones. But they're one of the remaining few. I think another one would be EA, which opted to go for EA. It's like EA Play or something like that, where Electronic Arts decided to not only have an event, but to show that they really didn't need the event, they decided to have it coincide with the same time frame as E3, but it's a completely separate event. So it really goes to show that when it comes to E3, a lot of people were already looking to kind of exit stage left, and now the actual event is canceled. Of course, this does not mean that it will be canceled forever, but rather E3 2020 is, just kind of dead in its form that it has been for the past couple of years. I think that there will still be an E3 2020 online. Of course, Xbox and Microsoft have announced that they will still have their announcements, but they will strictly do it online. PlayStation has already said that it would not participate in the event, and that will be for the second year in a row, though developers will nonetheless expect to give news on games for the new consoles. So developers, and not the console developer themselves, but developers of the video game studios, still go to E3 and talk about their latest games. But those will probably happen online. E3 is just the latest tech event. There have been many others. Facebook, Google, both of their developer conferences have been canceled. I think that there was, even in the one of the most ironic moves you can possibly think of, and really a conference talking about coronavirus, which is again the cause for all these cancellations. Coronavirus event was canceled, saying that it was a place for all of the academic minds to get together and talk about what they can do and how they can react to this. The event itself was actually shut down due to coronavirus. That's just something that had to happen, and it's of course full of irony. This is going to be an interesting year, especially for large events, gatherings, and sporting events and things like that. As I said at the beginning, I'm sure that a lot of people are very kind of burnt out on news about the coronavirus. But as long as there's no vaccine, and as long as this is something completely new to kind of our ecosystem. Gatherings of more than like 1,000 people are going to be under real intense scrutiny to say, is this really necessary, or can we, do without this? So sporting events, tech events, these conferences, all of them are going to be, well, probably canceled or delayed. Speaking of which, I think we have a couple more. So that one was, of course, E3 has been canceled. Let's see. So there were a couple others, and let's see. And I think I have them here. Um, let's see. So that's another one about coronavirus, and we'll talk about that in just a moment. Uh, Man, I could have. Well, okay. Here's one. Apple. Apple's Worldwide Developer Conference. I'm sure that one is under close scrutiny on whether or not that's actually going to happen. But here's some news out of Apple just to kind of show how far they're willing to go to minimize the impact of coronavirus. And really, with Italy, obviously, what's happening in Italy is just so insane that can happen in just over a week, that the entire country can go into lockdown, just business as usual, to like 2 weeks later the entire country is on lockdown. It's really something unique that's happening in Italy, and Apple is not immune to this with their Apple stores. Check this out. Apple is shutting down all of its stores in Italy indefinitely due to the coronavirus. So they will lay dormant until the point at which Apple retail stores feel safe enough to, I guess, operate within Italy. So Apple is indefinitely closing all 17 of its Apple stores, all 17 of its Apple Store retail locations in Italy due to the spread of the coronavirus. And they said that these were notices that were posted on the company's Italian website, and of course, Bloomberg picked them up. So, with that being said, the store closings are effectively a formality, though, given that the entire country has been put on lockdown as of March 9th. Obviously, there's not a lot of retail, there's not a lot of people walking the streets looking to spend money, as the entire country is in a panic over, well, the virus. Apple has yet to say when the stores will reopen, only noting that the stores will remain closed until a later date. The lockdown is currently set to lift on April 3rd. Think about that. March 9th to April 3rd. That's like 4 weeks of straight quarantine. Incredible that Italy was able to kind of implement something like that. So while the stores remain closed, Apple is instead directing customers to its support website for both phone and web-based customer support. And by the way, here's the actual notice, but unfortunately, yours truly does not actually speak, does not speak Italian. So the notice is in Italian. The Italian shutdown marks the second major closing of Apple's retail stores due to the virus, the other being that Apple closed all of its stores in China last month, although as of this week, all but 4 of the stores have reopened. And as I said, it's kind of a formality. I think that there was another article that happened while we were interviewing other guests and doing other shows, but I think there was a report that said that Apple only sold 500,000 iPhones in like 1 month, which, don't get me wrong, 500,000 phones sounds like a lot. But then when you're talking about a market as large as China, where you have 1.3 billion people, 500,000 phones is like nothing. It's almost like a thriving industry just dried up overnight. And hey, you're hoping that the floodwaters come back in and fill in the gaps, but it's going to take some time. And China is, of course, China is being very cautious with this, but Apple is, of course, closing down these stores as they see fit. It's not a good time to have a retail location, and luckily, I think Apple is one of those companies that has a very robust online infrastructure to be able to handle this. But hey, Italy is certainly something different that's been happening there. So there's that story. Again, Apple's shutting all of its stores indefinitely in Italy, probably going to be waiting for at least the lockdown, if not longer, to actually bring them back. The other one, and we had one more coronavirus story, and then I promise we're going to move on to other things. The other one being YouTube. So what happened here was there's been a lot of discussion about how to handle coronavirus news and reports. And don't get me wrong, there is, of course, information that you should directly gather from, let's say, the World Health Organization, from reputable sources that you can honestly believe in. But then there are other things, such as there were reports that Etsy has already taken down over a million. That was Amazon has taken down over a million products in relation to the coronavirus. Etsy has been taking down pretty much all products that have mentioned coronavirus in any capacity, that they could cure it or they can mitigate it or prevent you from catching it. And of course, YouTube earlier this, I think last week, said that any mention of coronavirus in any YouTube content that was going to mention that would fall under their sensitive events policy, and they would quickly demonetize all videos that mention the coronavirus. This is to help prevent videos from spreading that are only there to make money. That if you could put out a YouTube video that says strictly, uh, you know, here's how to keep you from getting the coronavirus, or here are 5 things you need to know about the coronavirus, insert clickbait here. They really wanted to make sure that none of those videos actually, went viral and made someone a lot of money, and of course, at the same time, spread misinformation, where people are obviously looking for all the credible information that they could. Well, now YouTube feels like it's time to reassess, those videos, because YouTube is a large platform. People watch a lot of videos there. If you can incentivize good information to come out of YouTube, that's going to help everyone. Strictly demonetizing, hoping to stop all the bad people, well, demonetizing also prevents people from putting out good information out there. So they said that it's reassessing its coronavirus policies. They said that obviously they would take down and demonetize any videos that mention the coronavirus, but after facing backlash and realizing that this will be an ongoing topic for many creators, YouTube is changing its stance. So they said that they placed the coronavirus outbreak and the atrocious acts that result in the loss of human lives. That was the sensitive events policy that they, first attributed this to, and said that that's the way they're going to take it down. But here's their statement, and this is from the CEO of YouTube, saying it's becoming clear that this issue is now an ongoing and important part of everyday conversation, and we want to make sure that news organizations and creators can continue producing quality videos in a sustainable way. So to start, YouTube will enable ads for a few channels, including those who self-certify. The CEO also mentions that YouTube is preparing policies to expand monetization to more creators and news organizations in the coming weeks. So the changes show that the fine line YouTube has to walk. It wants to avoid monetizing fake videos, as we mentioned, but of course, it needs legitimate outlets. They need their incentive to produce useful content. So they also mentioned that it's very, very hard to apply sweeping, broad generalizations when it comes to content creation. But of course, this nuance takes time. And as anyone may know, YouTube has just an incredible amount of content that is produced every single day. It's impossible for any one person or even one group of people, even hired by YouTube themselves, to moderate all the content. So I understand where they're coming from, but I think it's definitely worth looking into for them to think about, letting useful and good videos about the virus have their monetization back. Especially, of course, here on Computer America, we have the live video stream, and any content that is then let's just say today's show, I'm going to put in the show notes topics about the coronavirus that we talked about here today, and in the title, I'm probably going to mention some of these stories related to the coronavirus fallout. a video such as my own would be demonetized because I'm strictly mentioning it. I have not given any kind of cure-all. I'm not given any kind of advice. I'm strictly reporting on, well, the effects of the ever expanding, which, by the way, as of today, has been announced a full-blown pandemic. It's not just a virus that's simply floating around there. The World Health Organization has declared the coronavirus a pandemic, and just mentioning that would get this video demonetized. So, yeah, it's like I said, worth looking into. And with that, I think we're going to, kind of wash our hands of the coronavirus news, in one way to put it. And we're going to go ahead and move on to other topics. So everyone, so there's that one. Let's go ahead and continue on. I think, okay, this is also pretty big news. Obviously, it's going to have some trouble getting some headlines, but I think it's just as important. And California, one of the last major roadblocks, because California is so big, so large of an economy, and they may not write the legislation when it comes to technology, acquisitions, mergers, things like that, but they certainly have a lot of say into whether or not something like this would happen. And California has ended its opposition to T-Mobile and Sprint merger, saying that it hopes a settlement will overcome concerns about prices and jobs. Saying that New York isn't the only state to drop its fights against T-Mobile and of course the merger with Sprint, California Attorney General has dropped the state's challenge against the merger after reaching a settlement that theoretically addresses objections to the carrier buyout. They said that the expanded T-Mobile will have to guarantee affordable plans to California for a minimum of 5 years, including a plan of 2 gigs of data for $25 a month. The network will have to hold the plans from February 2019 for 5 years, 2 years longer than the FCC asked for, and give 10 million low-income households access to 100 gigs of free broadband per year, including a free mobile hotspot. It's something. It's obviously the death of free choice, but hey, they're able to squeeze a little bit more than the FCC was able to out of the deal. And the settlement also aims to protect jobs. Current retail employees at T-Mobile and Sprint will have to get offers of substantially similar jobs post-merger, with the total employee count after 3 years being equal to or greater than what it was pre-merger. I can kind of see one part of this deal that will definitely fall through. And I'm betting it's this whole idea of, the same amount of jobs with 50% less company and corporate to maintain. I don't see how there's going to be greater than or equal to jobs available. They said that California wants T-Mobile to create 1,000 jobs with call centers in Kingsburg, improve participation in diversity programs, and pay at least $15 million for investigation-related costs that the state has involved with the lawsuit. So while the California Public Utility Commission still has to greenlight the merger, they said that this makes, of course, the approval that much more likely. The deal could be closed off by April 1st, and the arrangement won't address some of the concerns from the objectors, including the reduced number of carriers and the potential job cuts in the future. Being able to promise the equal amount of jobs for 2 years, what happens after that? And I'm betting either a lot of layoffs or, hey, they're probably just going to throw all the papers out the window and say, well, it is what it is. We're not even going to bother trying to stick with that. So they said that, but it might prevent some of the worst consequences of corporate takeovers. I've been very vocal about this and very, I think it's a bad thing. But they also said that they were spinning off, as part of this, they're spinning off some of the more lower income parts of their business. They agreed to break off, the parts of their businesses that serve very, very either, kind of pay as you go, prepaid phones, lesser, cheaper, more affordable plans that lower income people were, forced to, kind of utilize. And they're spinning off those parts that just don't make as much money as, leasing the latest iPhone or purchasing the latest Android phone. Those more profitable parts of the business are merging, and they're spinning off the less profitable, more vulnerable parts of their business. And yeah, I mean, it's great news for the business. I don't think this is going to be great news for the consumer by any means, but there you go. So with that being said, our next story, and we have a couple of Tesla ones. Let's see. So we have let's see, real quick. Trying to do something real quick here, and yeah, not working. So we're not going to talk about that one. How about we talk about okay, the EU. And this is one more policy thing. Obviously, the last one policy being that they are dropping their opposition to the merger. This one, though, the European Union plans to introduce sweeping right to repair legislation for electronics. And this should really surprise no one. This is obviously something I think is definitely a great thing. Being able to have your devices be less throwaway and more repairable, as in design changes to phones, tablets, and computers. We have certainly entered a certain part of the computer's life cycle that it should have never gotten to the point where a computer is easier to throw away than it is to upgrade, or a computer is easier to throw away than it is to fix. I just had this conversation with my brother that they're looking to repair their tablet, and they sent it off to go, to get looked at and see if it's worth getting repaired versus just going out and getting a new one. That's a conversation that should probably never have to take place in the first place. These devices are, they can stick around for longer. It's just the amount of disposable and material that we use and the way that we produce these things makes it so that, hey, they're either overly difficult or just impossible to repair. So the EU is looking to tackle this. And as I said, this shouldn't be really surprising to anyone. With their, just about a month ago, they mandated that all phones have to work with a USB-C port. And when you have giant standardization like that, even though that's the way the industry was kind of going anyways, the only one that really had to be compelled to do that was Apple. And even Apple looked like they were going to leave their Lightning connector and go to a USB-C type port. But when you make giant sweeping legislative moves like that, you're looking at something even bigger. And it's not just about USB-C being the standard, but it's about, hey, no matter where these phones go, no matter where they come from, no matter whose hands they fall into, consumers, products should just work. Consumers should just have the option. Consumers should just have the option that these things just work right out of the box. There shouldn't be any kind of paywall. There shouldn't be any kind of prohibitive cable that only works with this one provider and doesn't work because, hey, the consumer got it secondhand. No, everything should just work. So as part of the Circular Economic Action Plan, the European Commission, the body that drafts the EU laws, says it will introduce right to repair legislation that will push electronics manufacturers to create products that last longer, include as many recycled materials as possible, and are easier to reuse, repair, and recycle, which is great. If the European Parliament were to pass the legislation, it would extend its eco-design law to cover phones, tablets, computers, and likely force tech companies to completely rethink the designs of their products. Up until this point, it's been, whatever's cheapest, whatever works for you, and hey, good job getting a product out there. Now, these companies will actually have to, think about the reusability, recyclability, and really the entire lifespan of their products. At the moment, most consumers have to turn to websites like iFixit to find information on how to fix their devices. They say that the legislation would also require those companies to provide easy to access information related to the repairability and durability of their products. Yeah, saying that single use will be restricted, premature obsolescence tackled, and the destruction of unsold durable goods banned. There you go. Just because a laptop is 10 years old, as we've talked about many times here on the show, just because technology is old does not make it useless. But so many people throw it away or just completely scrap something just because it doesn't work as good as it once did. Any right to repair bill that the European Union passes is likely to have significant impact outside of its borders because of the fact that it says it will ensure future trade deals reflect the enhanced objectives of the circular economy. And this is something that people may be sitting there thinking, well, hey, companies just won't sell those products in the EU. They'll have a different set of products that they'll sell to the European Union than what they'll sell, let's say, in America or China or India or Africa or anywhere else in the world. No, that's not how that works. These trade deals that they're talking about, it's the same thing that happened with the GDPR, the set of data privacy rules, and why every website you now go to, you have to click, okay, I understand that you use cookies. This matters more because the EU enforces that anyone who wants to do business in the European Union, which as a collective among all of its members is the largest economy of technology. They're some of the largest consumers of goods and services. And they say that if you sell a different kind of phone from Europe as opposed to America or China as opposed to Europe, you cannot do business in Europe. It's an all or nothing. So either companies have to figure out how to make the financials work of excluding the largest economic zone in the world, or they have to make sure that all of their products meet the European Union standards even outside the Eurozone, which I think is just a really good thing. It means that you don't need legislation to pass in every single country, and you don't have this patchwork. Companies have one set of rules to play by, and generally the EU, at least over the past couple of years, seems to be much more progressive than other countries when it comes to this. So they said that the plan is one part of the European Green Deal, a policy initiative that the EU announced last year. They advocate, they said that this is the goal of the European Green Deal is to transform the continent's economy in light of the climate crisis. So, yeah, e-waste. And, we've had companies here on the program and really even the driving organizations behind e-waste and e-cycling. It's a problem. We do not have it solved. It's not just a matter of, well, just put more money at it. No, there needs to be a fundamental shift in how we handle old technology. Because right now, it's a matter of putting it all in one place, and either it doesn't even get there, and it just sits in warehouses, or the other part, it's shipped off to not even China. China has completely disavowed this whole practice. Because it produces so much pollution and it's something that they're just not interested in. Instead, all of this e-waste is sold to Malaysia and other southern Southeastern Asian countries. But yeah, places like Malaysia, they'll buy this e-waste in bulk. Pay pennies on the ton for it. Unfortunately, the pollution that comes to refining this e-waste does a terrible toll on their environment, on their local environment and things like that. But of course, it's much needed commerce that is brought to the area. So they're essentially trading human lives and of course the local ecosystem. They're trading that for economic advancement. just because you're offshoring that and just because you're putting that on a new country doesn't mean that, hey, in Europe, you have it completely under control. Even if you had a place to put every single phone that is no longer in use, the solution is not a good solution. So the European Union is looking to tackle this. It's yeah, it's something that definitely needs tackled, and I'm surprised that they're taking such a step towards that. So they have a quote here, quote, "The linear growth model of take, make, use, discard has reached its limits. With the growth of the world population and consumption, the linear model pushes us closer to a resource crisis. The only way ahead is decoupling economic growth from extraction of primary resources and their environmental impacts." As in saying, the rare earth, rare mineral, the way that we currently gather resources from the earth is not sustainable. Where if you look at 2050, population is expected to go to like 9 billion people. It's just not sustainable the way that we're going. So something has to change. The plan is the latest attempt by the EU to tackle electronic waste, so on and so forth. As we mentioned, the cable standard was recently passed, and of course, Apple said that it would stifle innovation and ultimately hurt consumers more than it would help them if they standardized cable usage and the like. I gotta disagree with Apple on this one. Innovate in your software, innovate in your hardware, innovate in so many other ways, but cable design is not one of those. Data transfer speeds for USB Type-C are already incredible. They're better than, anything out there. And as long as the standards for future cables, as long as they stay competitive with what's possible out there, I really don't see a drawback for this. So there you go. Okay, so there's that one. And, one more UK, well, actually, hey, completely different places. We were just talking about the European Union. Turns out the UK is actually not part of the European Union. Who recalls that? Remember Brexit? Well, there you go. They said that the UK to levy additional tax on big tech companies beginning April 1st, as if their woes weren't going to be enough. They said that the 2% digital services tax is strongly opposed by the United States because obviously a lot of companies, such as Google, Apple, Facebook, Amazon, so many other companies do business in the UK and they already pay a bunch of taxes. But hey, what's a little bit more? So the UK's 2% tax on large multinational tech companies goes into effect on April 1st. They say that the US government strongly objects. The UK first announced the digital services tax in 2018, and well, it's ready to be enacted. The new legislation will levy a 2% tax on revenue from search engines, social media services, and online marketplaces that derive value from UK users. That means anyone who ships to, sells to, pulls data from, or in any way associates with the UK in general will have to pay this tax. It will only apply when company makes more than £500 million, or about $650 million. So your mom and pop stores or your Etsy shops that ship to the UK, I think you're going to be okay as long as you make less than $650 million from those digital activities, and when more than 25 or about $35 million of that revenue is derived from UK users individually. So yeah, companies like, as we said, Amazon, Apple, Facebook, Google, and more are impacted. They said that this singular tax could raise more than 400 million pounds, or about $500 million annually. The UK still believes that the best long-term option would be new international corporate tax rules, and says that it is committed to disapplying the digital service tax if such rules are put into place. So this is like a band-aid until they get what they really want, which is a much more sweeping tax restructuring. So the EU has proposed stricter tax laws for large companies, including a 3% tax on those with more than, well, 750 euros, so about 3% tax on those who make more than $800 million. But those are still being debated, and looks like other companies such as France have their own as well. Yeah, it's Europe in general. I don't want to say they're hostile, but they are they're not afraid to stand up to tech companies and say, you are printing money off of the data that we can, off the data that we provide, off of the services that we consume, and hey, it's time to pay us back. So there you go. Let's go ahead and continue on here. Plenty of other stories that we can talk about. Um, let's talk about some Elon Musk, some Tesla news, and hey, let's have fun with it. Elon Musk. Um, yeah. Let's see if this one can actually happen. Starlink. That is Elon Musk's plan to put a network of, I want to say, like 12,000 satellites into low Earth orbit. And this low Earth orbit satellite network would then provide internet to anyone and anywhere on Earth, be it in the depths of Australia, be it in the most inhospitable places on Earth, be that Australia, uh, be that, hey, somewhere where there's no one else around you for miles and miles. Again, probably Australia. You can get internet access. That is the goal. The goal is internet access anywhere, everywhere, forever and always. Uh, how he's going to accomplish that? Still kind of a head scratcher. As we said, it's going to take about 12,000 different satellites, and he's currently up to I think 100. It's a start, but it's not a perfect. It's not fully fleshed out just yet. Well, one of the issues with satellite internet, if you don't know, is that the amount of time it takes for the signal to go from whatever service you're talking about up to the satellite, back down to the user who's consuming that bandwidth from that satellite, and then from the user back to the service and back again. That continuous feed that if you have a direct connection via Ethernet or any home router or anything like that, that connection can take, depending on the service, 10, 20, 40, 50, 100, 200, 300 milliseconds. Obviously, when you are talking about things like virtual reality, you're talking about things like video games, when you're talking about latency, when it comes to YouTube videos or streaming media or things like that, you want that number as close to zero as possible. You want to be super close. That's why companies maintain servers all over the country. It's not just like how it's not just about having enough server space. It's about having those servers in places that are close to their customers. So with that being said, one big problem with existing satellite internet providers is that hey, they only have a handful of satellites to provide internet to people all over the United States, let alone the world. And the time it takes and the bandwidth allotted for each individual person is very, very small, compared to a broadband connection. In fact, we said for the longest time, it's almost unusable. Whenever you saw the commercials on TV a couple of years ago, whenever they talk about satellite internet, they're like, "Oh, hey, get satellite internet wherever you are, and it's easy, it's cheap, it's affordable, it's super high speeds." And then you look at the fine print, and in a day and age where 20 megabits per second was kind of the lay of the land, they were offering in the neighborhood of 900 kilobytes a second, which is just abysmal. So satellite internet has a problem. Latency is a huge one. Throughput is another. But looks like Elon Musk is promising that at least one of those is going to be latency. He's promising to solve that. He's saying that hopefully but Elon Musk, he said that latency of less than 20 milliseconds would make Starlink comparable to wired broadband services. And when SpaceX first began talks about these satellite plans in 2016, it said that the latency would be about 25 to 35 milliseconds, but Musk has been predicting sub 20 milliseconds since at least May 2019, with the potential for sub 10 millisecond latency sometime in the near future. If he could do that, great, amazing. That would be truly a feat to behold. Obviously, the amount of bandwidth available will be enough to support typical internet usage, at least in rural areas. He said that the bandwidth is a very complex question, but let's just say somebody will be trying to watch high definition movies, playing video games, and doing all the things they want to without noticing speed. So he promises that the throughput will also be solved. A lot of promises, but if anyone's going to deliver on those, Elon Musk seems like, one of the people that might be able to make it happen. Starlink will likely serve the 3 or 4% of the hardest to reach customers for telcos and people who simply have no connectivity right now, or the connectivity is really bad. So I think it will be helpful and take a significant load off of traditional telcos. For sure. And it seems unlikely that Musk would purposely forego revenue in large cities. He may be trying to delay conflict with big cable companies, which have a history of suing potential competitors to delay their progress. If you want to see more examples of when large telcos feel threatened, look at what happened with either any municipal broadband plan that they have tried to roll out, or look at anything Google Fiber did. And it's, telcos are very adversarial when it comes to encroachment on their captured markets. So here in the article, they also mention SpaceX president and COO Gwen Shotwell recently said that the company is likely to spin out the Starlink broadband business and take it public, and that it could happen sometime in the next several years, saying that we're thinking of a Starlink spinoff. We need to make things work. There you go. Obviously, launching 12,000 satellites and then providing a customer service, offering a customer service type business model, a lot of overhead and very, very slow to recoup those costs. So he said that that'll be a big step. More than 0 low Earth orbit satellite companies in the not bankrupt category. So there you go. Previous companies that deployed low Earth orbit satellites went bankrupt, and it's just not a very profitable venture to do this. But I think Elon Musk has ideas that are a little bit beyond, a thriving money earning company. He sees a future where everyone has internet always. And don't get me wrong, there are other companies that are looking to do the exact same thing, including Facebook. Facebook and Google both have expressed interest in helping with this endeavor and having satellite internet available for anyone, because hey, if you're going to have internet anywhere, anytime, all the time, Facebook and Google would of course profit immensely from everyone on Earth having a continuous internet connection. So there's a couple different angles here. I'm not going to say that it's strictly altruistic for Elon Musk to do this, but I think that's part of it. And hey, everyone is better off because everyone will have access to the internet. No more getting lost. Finally, Apple Maps may actually be able to get you to your destination instead of running you off the road. So there you go. Now, next topic. How about we talk about I found this one interesting because I've been a League of Legends player for a long time. I definitely enjoy the game. Though I will say, when it comes to actually playing League of Legends, one thing I don't miss when I take these long breaks from playing the game is the community. They are awful. They are horrible, horrible people to the core. And that I like to think that that's not strictly League of Legends. Other companies have a toxicity problem, but I gotta say League of Legends is one of the worst I've ever seen. So they implement this new system. How Riot Games' new team plans to curb trolling before it begins, and they have contemplated the definition of what toxicity is, kind of in real time. So Riot Games doesn't use the word toxic, although toxic would be something that, that's something that I would definitely call their users. And they have a quote here from the head of player dynamics. Toxicity means different things to different people. What's trash talk to one person is totally inappropriate to someone else, which makes it really hard to proactively design a solution. Toxic is so subjective, we fail to see how it was blinding us to the possibilities. So, the studio behind League of Legends, a competitive MOBA with an average of 8 million players a day, Riot has battled in game harassment, trolling, sexism, and racism for more than 10 years. And trust me, it really hasn't gotten a handle on it. Over this time, they've earned a reputation for an explosively popular multiplayer game and also a hotbed for offensive language and negative behavior. In 2012, the studio launched a player behavior team whose sole focus was to use psychology to curb game ruining experiences. The group rolled out the honor system, which allowed players to award their teammates for positive behavior. Uh, yeah, that didn't really do all that much. So when the honor system first went live, they still were using the word toxic. In 2020, they said that they have launched a new practice called player dynamics, which will study and develop the communication tools for studios and coming titles, not just League of Legends. So this article is a bit long. We're going to jump around a little bit here. But yeah, the player dynamics team includes of course the director and advisor, Dr. Kimberly Vole, who who is an expert in an industry-wide initiative to encourage healthy communication in video games. Uh, they're going to draw upon cognitive science, anthropology, sociology, and of course, just in general, trying to figure out why are people so mean to each other online. Uh, as to why, people have that veil of being anonymous, and yeah, I think that there's just no pushback. And of course, that's simplifying it. The real reason, hey, who knows? So they said that player dynamics won't necessarily focus on building concrete tools like voice chat or text commands in Riot Games. Instead, the group will study player interactions and infuse studio new games with anti-trolling tricks from the get-go. So note, this doesn't mean League of Legends is getting full team voice chat, although it should get it. Honestly, Riot, please, full team voice chat. I want to hear these squeakers when they're, yelling at us. So Riot has been battling disruptive behavior outside of his games as well. They mentioned a class action gender discrimination lawsuit that they had to pay about $10 million. The company Bro Culture and Anti-Women Environment, Kotaku wrote about them in 2018. And let's just say, yeah, there's a lot of history behind the culture of the video game studio itself, let alone, just from the players. So, with that being said, let's go ahead and wrap this up. Player Dynamics will largely work behind the scenes, but its research will be infused in all of Riot's new games. It's still early days for the field of player dynamics, but I can tell you that Riot is taking it very seriously, and you'll likely see results of our work in our new games. We think of player dynamics beyond the general tools and extend to any player-to-player interaction. So our work will manifest itself in early stages of design and development, which I'm sure would be things like, if I had to guess, it seems like they're going to, instead of having only positive interactions between players, what if you have really, really negative sentiments towards a certain player? There are no in-game tools to allow you to, I guess, kind of channel or funnel those feelings into something productive. If you really don't like playing with someone, instead of turning to the racist approach, which no one should ever be racist and no one should ever be sexist, what if instead you could say, I don't want to play with this person ever again? With a player base of 8 million people, that should completely be an option. So being able to channel these feelings and these sentiments into something productive and not just offensive would be something that I would really like to see. So let's see. We have time for one, maybe two more articles here as we wrap up computer and technology news. How about some leaks? And by leaks, I mean this is why I've never had a problem with reporting on leaks or things like that. And it has to do with the fact that, well, I honestly do think that companies put out prototypes into the field and they're picked up on purpose. And these are simply glorified ads or ways to catch people's imagination. So these leaks that happen, I don't want to say like, oh, someone got the inside scoop. This is something really crazy. No, this is probably free headlines for them. So hey, why not feed into it? Here we go. Ars Technica, get your first look at a real Pixel 4a prototype. And the renders were right, and for a budget, this looks pretty great. Saying that the Pixel 4a probably won't hit the market for another 2 months, but a prototype of the next budget flagship phone has already been leaked. And when we last looked at the Pixel 4a, our access to the image was only due to renders from OnLeaks. And of course, OnLeaks, they get theirs from looking at the patent filing, and then they make computer models of what the patent filings would look like. And by the way, those early renders look exactly like what it is. So as expected, we're getting a mid-range phone with a Samsung-style hole-punch display, a rear fingerprint reader, and a Snapdragon 730. You're looking at a display resolution of 2340 by 1080, so a little bit better than HD. 5.81-inch display. You get a headphone jack, so yay for people who are really complaining about not having a headphone jack. 6 gigs of RAM, 64 gigabytes of storage, 3000 milliamp battery, which is pretty good. It's actually bigger than the one in the more expensive Pixel 4, which went out the door with the anemic 2800 milliamp battery. That's not a good battery. And one part of the settings lists 2 SIM cards, but before you jump to conclusions, of course, there's probably this is probably a way for the phone to have either a SIM slot and an eSIM slot, or I'm sorry, an eSIM capability within the operating system without actually having 2 SIM cards. So hold your horses on that. The back features a similar design to the Pixel 4 with one square camera block on the top right corner, and it looks like a 12 megapixel camera, and it's mostly for show. There you go. There's also a made-up logo on the back instead of the usual Google G. Google products always feature a weird logo as an indication that this isn't a final product. And you can see the weird logo right there. It's kind of like a G, but it's like flipped up on its side and not exactly a, not an official Google thing. Because obviously, if it's a prototype, they don't want people to immediately recognize it as such. So with that being said, Google I/O has been canceled. The details of when we'll actually hear about this will probably be within the next month or so. That's about when we hear about it. Like we always get like the leak about 1 month before, and then we get the actual product announcement a month later, and then the actual product comes out a month after that. So everything, the leak included, right on schedule. Good job, Google. So there you go. Let's see. Okay, last one, and we'll keep it about space. NASA. Oh, wrong one. There we go. NASA. And let's talk about this real quick. NASA's future monster rocket is once again over budget and behind schedule, which is unfortunate. I'm not rubbing this in NASA's face. I'm not disappointed in NASA. It's something that happened, and as someone who really appreciates how technology plays a central role in space and how space can play an even larger role in what technology will be in the future, I wish that this was on budget and on time. But here we go. The Space Launch System, or the SLS, is the epicenter of NASA's Artemis program. They're saying that once complete, the SLS is set to be the most powerful rocket in the world, capable of lifting about 200,000 pounds of material into low Earth orbit. NASA plans to fly people on top of the SLS, sending them to dock with a small station around the moon, where they will journey to the surface on a lander. So there you go. Since the SLS is so crucial to NASA's lunar ambition, the Inspector General did a complete assessment of the contracts, and it's not going well. They said that the 3 government contractors, Boeing, Aerojet, Rocketdyne, and Northrop Grumman, are working on the rocket. Boeing is handling the majority of the vehicle. Aerojet is working on the engines, and Northrop is making boosters that will give the rocket the extra thrust at liftoff. All three, by the way, it has resulted in $2 billion of cost increases and 2 years of delay. So the fact that it's over budget and behind schedule by more than 33% compared to the baseline figures NASA gave Congress in 2019, and that will probably grow to 43%, well, and more delays probably to occur. So don't hold your breath, but honestly, I hope that this comes to fruition sometime soon. So there you go. It is what it is, and there you go. So everyone, hey everyone, thank you so much for tuning into Computer America. I want to thank you for checking us out. And hey, if you'd like to find out more, computeramerica.com. And hey, catch us here Monday through Friday, 4 p.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern. Again, if you were hoping for Sandy Berger, we will have her on next week, or of course the following month. We'll keep you up to date on that. So until next time, have a great day. Thank you so much. Have a good one. Bye, everyone.